Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. We are about to go outside, and the reason why I'm talking to you inside is for two reasons. Number one, it is so bright and beautiful outside, which is a lovely change, but it is still very, very windy, so I'm not going to be doing any talking out there because all you'll hear is the wind. The second reason is that when we were last together, the video was about some surprises, some for you, some for me. My freeze dryer arrived and you guys saw that and I was really excited about it. And you guys met my new dog, Ladybird, for the first time. Now, Ladybird is fantastic and fabulous. Still a bit cheeky, still needs some lessons, but fabulous. Freeze dryer, there was another surprise there for me. So I cannot get the vacuum to work properly. It did turn out that I was maybe the dumbest kid in school and hadn't turned on the vacuum pump, and that was maybe like a fair 95% of the problem. But the door was also loose, so I've had to tighten that, and that's improved things, but I still can't get it to pass the first tests. So I still can't get it to, I still can't put anything in the freeze dryer and start freeze drying, which means this morning I had to rearrange the freezer because I'm going to have to put the bone broth that I've been making last week. Oh, Reffy's groaning and moaning outside, which means he wants to go outside and play. But I'm going to have to put that bone broth in the freezer and deal with that once the freeze dryer is sorted. Of course, it's a Saturday, so I'm not going to be able to get any help. And because I am in Australia and Harvest Rider in America, it's probably going to take days to sort it out because I'll send one email while they're asleep and then they'll send another one while I'm asleep. Anyway, we are going outside. We got a lot to do. We're going to make the most of this beautiful weather while we've got it. I've heard that La Nina is going to end in January, which is terribly exciting, that we will stop flooding. I'm very, very excited about that. Which means that we maybe will have more things to harvest and pop in the freeze dryer in the event that it decides to start working, which is very, very exciting. I'm very on board with that. But for today, we are going to be planting some statice and a couple of other flowers that I'm wanting to dry out and use on my Christmas tree. What else are we doing? We've got some new herbs that need to go in some new pots that I bought because I want to be able to freeze dry them, again, in the event that the freeze dryer decides to work. I have some seedlings that we planted before together that I'm going to toss because I've planted as many of them as I can. Cousin It needs to be attended to because he's looking pretty rough after the last lot of rain that we had. And also he has bloomed and it's a very underwhelming bloom given that you have to put up with the monstrosity of Cousin It in your garden. So that's probably gonna go because I've had heaps of trouble with aphids, and so if Cousin It isn't looking all that healthy, I don't want to have anything that might attract aphids, which leads me to planting chamomile. Apparently chamomile helps, so we're going to be planting some of that. We are also going to be ripping up some more celery because we had one single cold day and the celery that hadn't bolted has now bolted, so it's got to come out. And I think that's about it. We do have to put up another, what are they called? Archway for the cucumbers to climb on, but I doubt we're going to get all that done today, especially given it's going to be Ladybird's first adventure in the garden and that these puppies are already up to mischief because they've just woken up from their nap. So let's get to it. Let's get out into the garden and I'll see you guys out there. I really love the bunny tail blooms. These plants were teeny tiny last summer and they have thickened up enormously over winter, and now they are producing stacks of these gorgeous blooms that dry beautifully. What I want to do is cut some of them and to harvest the seeds. You can see the little white seeds on the bloom, and then dry them out and use them as part of my Christmas tree decorations. This year I'm hoping to decorate my Christmas tree with blooms, dried blooms of all kinds, rather than the standard Christmas tree decorations. I had made a great start on this with a whole heap of dried straw flowers that I grew at my last house that I was renting, but unfortunately with all the flood level rains that we've had, they went moldy, and so with every bloom that I dry now, I've been keeping it in the pantry, and every time the big rains come, I am putting the dehydrator on. So I gathered up a huge group of these to very carefully remove it's almost like a grass straw leaf, but they're very hard to get off without snapping the actual stem of the flower. The recent rains and the increasing heat have actually really helped these straw flowers produce more blooms. They were already producing a lot of blooms, but it seems between me harvesting them to dry them and the enormous amount of rain we've had, the plants have gone from strength to strength, and I'm starting to see some of the peach and orange colors come out, and of course our beautiful salvia is in bloom, and I'm going to try and harvest some of this too to see if it will dry, because it would be a beautiful color on the Christmas tree. I am deeply in love with these flannel flowers, and if I wasn't renting, I would 100% be growing more. Their petals feel exactly like soft flannel, and they have these beautiful subtle green tips. I'm just in love with them. The cosmos have started blooming, the pincushion flowers have started blooming, and everything is just starting to look so stunning. Depending on my plans for the flowers, and obviously depending on the shape of the plant, I'm harvesting some of the straw flowers with long stems and some with shorter stems. Sometimes the way the blooms are situated on the flower, it is going to optimize me getting more blooms by having a shorter stem, which is totally fine for a Christmas tree, but I am also trying to now, where I get the opportunity, cut some longer stems so I can have more variety of use for those flowers. And ultimately I would like to look at, can I sell some produce down the track? So obviously my current garden is too small to do that. It is too small to even produce a year's worth of food for me. But it is nice to practice with and start experimenting with what can be done. Cousin It has to go. So you can see this huge monstrosity of a plant with white flowers that look so much like a petunia flower. And this came from a white cottage flower mix seed pack. These seeds would have been planted in February, not long after I moved in, which is late summer for us. So I thought they would maybe bloom in fall and then die out for us. But you can see they have gone from strength to strength and somehow turned into this giant beast of a plant. I left it because I was like, well, it's obviously, happy, and at some point it's going to produce surely something magnificent. But the flowers literally just look like petunia flowers, so I don't see why you would take up all this space and cast all this shadow over your veggie patch when sunlight is at a premium for something that looks like a petunia, which I could plant for ground cover if I really wanted that flower. So out it came, and unfortunately it had little spikes on it that drove my skin crazy, and also it got Birdie as well. You can see my cauliflowers are looking really rough. After the heavy rains we've had recently, I came out and there was a lot of black on the leaves, and a lot of my snow peas and a lot of the other plants actually have fungal infections now. So I did just rip out some of these cauliflowers. They had also been mauled by, I suspect, a local bush rat, so they got added to the pile to go in the garbage bin. I had tried to harvest some of these carrots that were wildly overplanted in this pot, and the top snapped off, and I was kind of like, I'll deal with it another day. And it looked like Birdie or Raphael, and I think it was probably Birdie, even though Rapha's the carrot eater, had gnawed off the top of those carrots. So I thought I better get in there and pull them out. And as you can see, it was basically just the tops coming off the carrots, and the carrots had basically turned into one giant lump. I was actually pleased to see that they were my best carrots. They were the straightest carrots I've grown, and they were the least cardboardy. So I think I'm starting to get there with better carrot produce. But if you have any tips for how to prevent cardboardy carrots, then I would love to hear them. It surely can't be water them more, because we have had so much rainfall they can't possibly have been underwatered. As the days go by, Birdie and Raphael are finding a happy middle ground. You'll probably hear them wrestling in the background because that's what they do all day, and they're curious about what I'm doing. But it was nice to see them eating some of the messed up carrots that one of them had had a go at while I cleared out the rest of the pot. Birdie, it seems, is not as interested in eating vegetables, although she did steal one of the celeries that had gone to seed and work on the cardboard around the bottom, which I had added to try and see if blanching the celery would actually thicken up the stalks of the celery, because otherwise my celery grows quite spindly little sticks. If you have any tips for how to grow the nice big fat juicy stems of celery, then I would really appreciate you letting me know below in the comments. This was Birdie's first time in the garden, so I did have to keep an eye on them a fair bit. She did open up the potting mix for me and it kind of started spilling everywhere. But it was time to pot up some more herbs. I had picked up some more flat leaf parsley because mine has all gone to seed, and some more basil because I'm really struggling to get my basil going because we've had every so often a couple of really cold days, and this week we're having an Arctic blast, which is unpleasant given that we're almost in summer, and that's what's causing my celery to go to seed as well. But I thought I would pot these up and hopefully be able to freeze dry a whole stack of fresh herbs, including a stevia plant, which I am potting right now. And I don't really know what I'm going to do with that, but I thought it might be interesting to try experimenting with that. I also dug out some of my compost. It wasn't 100% ready, but it was pretty close. It honestly always amazes me how many huge worms there are in my compost, given that it's not on the ground. But you know what is on the ground? Some of my pots. Birdie came along and flipped them over because why not? It's pretty fun to do, apparently. So she's got some learning to do in the garden about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. This is probably an overshare, going to do what I did with Raphael when I got him as a pup. He would like to dig in and find all the stinky stuff in the garden or eat the fertilizer. He's still a fan of fertilizer. But what I would do is when I was picking up his poops, I would put them in the area where he was digging so he would stop digging. And I've started doing that with Birdie, and hopefully that will help her find somewhere else to busy herself. So I put my compost in this little corner here. I had one yellow zucchini plant to plant, and my original plan was to go yellow black with the zucchinis, which is what I've done, except this yellow zucchini was much later to bloom, to germinate than every other one, and so I wasn't expecting it. So it's just going to be the random one ruining that pattern in this corner. So I planted it. I knew there were also some potato cut-offs in the compost, which I'm happy for the potatoes to pop up wherever they want, and we'll just see how we roll. I'm hoping for obviously as many potatoes as possible, but the main thing was to get the zucchini in and get it enough space to expand. I'm really amazed with how much everything has just put on a huge amount of growth in the last 2 weeks, and that we're starting to see some zucchinis pop up on the other plants. Even though I didn't manage to get everything I planned done, I was so happy with the removal of Cousin It. It just made such a difference to the garden, and everything looked so much more open, and everybody celebrated our freedom from this giant horrible plant. So if you look at my garlic, I actually came out and squished them all by hand the other day, and it looks like there's like a million more already. I know it's hard to see with the GoPro, but they're back. I ended up throwing out all the kale I harvested the other day because it was infested, and this is too, so I'll spray it a bit, but then I think I'm just gonna chuck it. It's not like I like kale, but look at them. They're everywhere. That's it. I'm all done outside for today. I wanted to come in mostly because the dogs have come inside to sleep, but I like to keep an eye on them as they're adjusting to each other. They have had a few squabbles, and plus we've only had Lady Bird for a week. She is coming out of her shell a little bit, and so I'm starting to see a little bit of a mischief monster coming out. Things like today, she was knocking over my pots, digging up the carrots, shoving her face in the Swiss chard, which is all part of a learning process and completely fine. But I need to be there to correct that behavior so that she doesn't think that that's cool to do long term. So Rafa was doing the same sort of thing when I adopted him, but he was 12 weeks old. And he has learnt over time what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And for the most part, he just runs around in the garden like a happy little chappy and just wants to chase lizards. So Ladybird's got a little bit of learning to do. She gets frustrated easily. She's basically like a 12-week-old dog in the body of a 1-year-old dog. So she's got a little bit of learning to do, and it just makes being out there a little bit more exhausting and a little bit more labor intensive because I've got to keep an eye on them the whole time. Plus it is super windy outside, and like the ribbon has blown off my hat. Not that I care. I never was particularly attached to this hat in any way, but it's still like, it's so windy that I'm losing parts of my attire. That being said, it is such a beautiful crystal clear blue sky today, which is just so lovely to enjoy. But I think it's time to come inside and cool down and just chill out for a bit. Plus, I need to pull off all the leaves off the straw flowers and off the bunny's tails and save the bunny tail seeds and hang those up to dry. So I'm going to call it quits for today. Even though I didn't get to plant the seeds that I wanted to, I got most of everything else done, and Cousin It's gone, so that's the main thing. I hope you guys have enjoyed hanging out with us today. We've really loved having you with us. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.